Let's have a look into the future with award-winning futurist, researcher, keynote speaker Nikolas Badminton on Canada Now. And Nick, we wanted you in here because we wanted to look ahead at what 2020 is going to be like.
Yeah.
But first, let's look back at 2019.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes,
As you do on your website, of course, NikolasBadminton.com. Let's look back at 2019 because you made bold predictions.
I did.
For 2019.
Yeah.
I think you nailed them, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's not too difficult to look out for about a year, but I pretty much put a line in the sand and I say this is going to happen this year, and yeah, it's been pretty strong.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go over it.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to increase your credibility.
Sure.
Okay. So first off, you said that there was going to be increasing tension between technology giants and government, and there we had it. We had Twitter banning political advertising, WeWork's failed IPO, Mark Zuckerberg having to testify, of course, in front of international commissions, and that seems to be ongoing.
Everyone, the gloves are off.
Yeah.
You know, we're Elizabeth Warren is on it. Everyone's on it. You know, the big tech companies being sort of held to rights a little bit. You know, there are some of the big tech companies that are a little better than others. Facebook's sort of really been dealt like the worst cards, but then it kind of asked for it. You know.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would say that. Another thing you had looked at for 2019, smart cities,
yes.
And how we're going to be handling smart cities and how they are going to evolve over the course of the year.
Hasn't it been interesting with Sidewalk Labs in Toronto and just all the other... There's about 1,000 smart city projects happening around the world. 500 of those are in China. These are pilot projects, right? Mm-hmm. And then we see closer to home down here in Toronto, and we see the whole Sidewalk Labs, and they come in with a bigger proposal wanting more land, and which is just a negotiation ploy, and then they pare back and they still get more than they originally asked for.
So there's reconfiguration.
Oh, you know, it's like when you've got like the big guns going against the city, they're really, really smart. I like all these companies. You know, we all need to work out how we can play fairly, but really it's the citizen in the middle that's sort of been like the ping pong ball being like batted around. We need to empower the citizens. We need to give them ownership of the data.
You also predicted this year, 2019, economic protectionism will be rife, and the great global AI ethics debates will begin. And we've had many of those, you and I, on this show.
Yeah. You know what? It's been really interesting. There's been a whole bunch of companies, there's been a whole bunch of countries trying to put together AI ethics, like forums and teams, and they've all failed miserably. People can't wrap their hands around it because it's this sort of shape-shifting, ever-changing sort of discipline, right? But there's still this big discussion around ethics, and people are still, rolling out the old trolley problem, which is like, okay, on one side of the tracks there's 5 workers, and on the other side is a woman with a baby. Which one does the self-driving car kill? It's like, it doesn't kill either of them. The self-driving car stops.
It stops.
But, that didn't work very well for Uber, did it?
Yeah.
And that's because a human turned off a whole bunch of the sensors in the car.
Really?
By all accounts.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't actually programmed to really take jaywalking into consideration. So yeah. Ethics debates is still hot and ongoing. That was kind of an easy one. I already saw a lot of the discussions coming, but no one's getting their hands around it. I mean, where's the ethics? Where are the technology ethics boards in any country or any of the tech companies? Right?
Yeah,
they're just starting to bubble up now.
The reinvention of education. You predicted that would start. And the talent pooling from 5th grade and earlier will begin.
Yeah. So this is the idea that the really big tech companies are going to start grooming kids from a very early age to work for them. And I think that, there are murmurs that some of these things are actually going to be happening. I think this is something that's going to be ongoing for the next 3 to 5 years. I think you'll see everyone from like Amazon to Facebook, Google, Microsoft, whoever, actually starting their own academies and actually taking the talented kids out of local communities into their academies. If you look down in San Francisco, I think that there's a huge amount of talent in Oakland, in San Francisco, whatever. But I saw CNN speaker Van Jones speak about this dilemma it's like 30 miles between Silicon Valley and some of the poorest neighborhoods in America with some of the most talented kids, and they can't build a bridge between those two worlds. So maybe I would love to see a bridge being built between, like, you know, the underrepresented, you know, poor Americans that could actually be part of a good solution, and Canadians and British and Europeans and you know.
So would we be looking at this as more of an opportunity for kids coming up, or is this, because it feels like, oh, big companies grooming their employees at a very early age? Which one of the two would you think it's more like?
It's a huge opportunity for kids. I think that if any of these companies do step forward and help kids through education, they can't hold the kids up for ransom when the kid graduates. That kid should be able to go wherever they want, right? So I think that if anyone puts any goodness into the education system, and it needs it, right, in a lot of places, then it needs to be no holds barred, sort of no strings attached. Let's just help the kids do more, do better.
Yeah. The fifth prediction you had for 2019, the fight for Africa would heat up, and Africa is continuing to be a hugely contested continent for resources, tech talent, and the next billion users. That's something we've talked about.
Yeah, for sure. The median age in Africa right now is just over 18 years old. You know, by 2100, Africa is going to have some of the largest megacities in the world. In Nigeria and Lagos, it will be over 88 million people in size.
Wow.
So China's come in super heavy. The Belt and Road Initiative, they're building the new Silk Road. They're building huge infrastructure. They're going in, it's like, we're your friends. Let us bankroll this. Let us lend you money at very affordable rates. And they've just literally steamrolled over every other country that's been trying to do this. And it's because so many international countries just moved out of Africa. They'd like, yeah, we're not going to spend money there. We're going to take our money back home. And China just slipped in. So thank you very much. And the US is not doing very well there at all.
Will that change?
Not right now. I don't think there's a priority to even look at Africa. I mean, you might actually see some large companies starting to think about, you know, how do we get in there and what do we do? But the next billion users will be India and Africa.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. Yeah.
And you know, and this is a pretty well-known discussion in the newspapers about, you know, where they're actually going to build things out in the next, and we'll talk about the trillion sensor economy. We're gonna turn on the next 4 billion users that are going to use the internet. That's
amazing. That was one of the things that you were looking at as far as the 5 main trend areas.
Yeah, that's right.
Through 2020. You talked about the Trillion Sensor Society. The number of IoT devices on the planet will increase 5-fold in 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, are we ready for this?
Are we ready for any technology? You know, I bring up a couple of pictures in one of my keynotes, and it's a picture of New York City in 1900, and it's just horses and carriages and one car. Yeah. And 13 years later, it's a street full of cars and no horses, right? Is anyone ready? No. Yeah. Do people have to pay attention to what's going to change? Yeah, absolutely. Now, you know, we've both got smartphones. These smartphones have got between like 10 and 20 sensors in them alone. 6 billion smartphones are going to be in circulation by next year. Then smart buildings, and then everything within, you know, the smart home, and then smart streets and smart cities and smart industry.
Yep.
And then more satellite technology going out there, then self-driving cars and buses and ships and whatever. We're surrounded. Yeah. And what it's going to be corporate surveillance on a mass scale. And then...
Well, is that going to start in China?
Well, no, it's already there in China.
Yeah.
Is it going to start in places across Canada, across the US, wherever? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it depends on and we've talked about this before, what the purpose of that is. You know,
yeah.
Is it to keep people in line, or is it to keep people safe?
I read an article yesterday saying that the Sentry mode on new Teslas could potentially be used by local police to basically keep an eye on the streets.
Oh boy!
So thousands of Teslas as these sort of police sentries. I don't know if that's going to go through as a business deal. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, everyone's holding hands. Everyone wants to be friends. You know, military, police, you know, private companies. It's an interesting world.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so that was just one of the trends that you were looking at for 2020. By the way, you were calling 2020 the year of resiliency.
Yeah, we got to toughen up.
Yeah.
You know, it's climate is going to hell, and the warnings are coming in thick and fast on that. As humans, we're sort of being forced into this surveillance society. Cities are getting busier and busier. I mean, we're sat here in Toronto. It was the fastest growing city in North America last year.
Really?
78.
Felt like it.
78,000 people moved here last year.
Felt like it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I moved here this year, and it was painful to do it.
Yeah, it just going from across the city, just driving across the city.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's always traffic.
People
Different. It feels different.
People call this one of the most exciting cities in North America. As I travel around, they're like, "Oh, Toronto, one of the most exciting cities in North America."
Do you find it to be one of the most exciting?
I
cities?
moved here, man. I love it.
Yeah, but is that why? I mean, like, because I've been here forever. I've always lived here. I do find that it is busier and more congested, but exciting. I don't find it any more exciting because I'm used to it. I've always been here.
Yeah, out in the business community, meeting people in business, in workplaces, doing events. I just had a conversation with a guy in a co-working space I work at. Things are happening. It's really cool. I really love it. It's a real jewel in the crown of Canada, as is Montreal, as is Calgary and Edmonton and Vancouver and everywhere in between, where little moments of innovation and new thinking are popping up, and it's happening in rural Canada as well. I'm hugely thrilled to be Canadian.
Okay, well, in terms of energy, because I am concerned about what's happening out in Alberta.
Yeah.
If people have dug in their heels to say this is the way we've always done it and that's the way it's going to be, or if they are welcoming change that is going to happen whether they like it or not. Because one of the trends that you look at is renewable energy becoming our only choice. The University of Oxford, and you've written about this on NikolasBadminton.com, the University of Oxford recently ran a study that found more than 90% of patents filed by oil companies in 2018 were for technologies aimed at making fossil fuels more efficient, and banks are being pushed to help leaders who are attempting for a greener planet.
Yeah, all companies are still walking backwards. They're still in charge in many ways. I talk about a great dilemma. The great dilemma is this. After 250 plus years of the great industrial revolutions has thrust us forward into 2020, and it's been fueled by fossil fuels. So we can't look back and say that was all wrong, we were all wrong, we were all bad. But fundamentally, we did not expect the planet to react like it is, which is warming. And the UN says that by 2100, we're not going to hit the 1.5 degree centigrade rise that we were aiming for. It's going to be 3.9, and that's going to be pretty catastrophic for the ecology of the planet. So this is why renewables are the only choice. Mark Carney, the outgoing governor of the Bank of England, great Canadian guy, who now works for the United Nations, but he turned around before he left, and he was like, you know what, companies that, large-scale industry and whoever else that does not embrace this new green renewable energy world will go out of business. Over 130 banks have said that they're going to take on the principles from the UN to try and run a more sustainable portfolio of assets that they hold. They hold $47 trillion worth of assets, including all of the fossil fuel companies. So now what you've got is fossil fuel companies are desperately trying to make the money that they need to make. They're being surrounded by the banks. And Saudi Aramco, Saudi's biggest oil company, the oil company, it just went public. $1.8 trillion valuation, biggest company in the world.
Wow.
And it's all going to hell because people are not going to get the returns. They paid a lot of local investors a lot of money. They motivated local investors to pump up the valuation and whatever. I actually see that Saudi Aramco within 18 months, maybe 2 years, will go down below $1 trillion in valuation. It's just going to keep going down and down and down.
Well, if that's happening, yeah, for sure. So how do we see Canada evolving and keeping pace there, specifically what's happening out in Alberta?
People are scared. I was in Alberta last week. I stood up on stage. 500 people spoke about the future of farming. I was told by the organisers, please speak about climate resiliency, water resiliency, farming, whatever. I did. And at the end, 2 speakers stood up and literally called me names. like very, very rudely, that I cannot say on the radio.
All right.
And said half of what you said was this and this and this, very angrily.
Right.
And people online were attacking me over stats that I put out, and nothing's perfect in the stats world, but the fundamental thing was they were attacking the idea that the planet is warming and that farming's responsible. And it's like, I didn't say that. Actually farming's got a really interesting history. It's like the oldest thing that's built society, from 9 BC. The first settlements were building society because of farming, so it's so exciting as an industry. But it's Alberta, they're scared. But you've got huge oil businesses that are now building some of the biggest wind farms in Canada. It's like Suncor's building a huge wind farm, solar's coming in, geothermal projects coming in. Alberta's got an incredible future if they just stop and actually wake up, smell the coffee, realize they can be part of this new future. The unions are ready to change. The workers in the oil fields are ready to change to a new renewable world. They are. I've spoken with them and to them, and they're incredibly motivated to do so. Our government needs to be motivated as well as the people on the ground in Alberta. They just had it so good for so long. In the next year, I'm going to be talking about what is to what if. Everyone talks about what is, this is the way that we do things. We don't need to change. This is how it's always going to be. They're wrong. I talk about what if.
Yeah.
What if we change?
Yeah.
What if we look to new technologies? What if we look to a better future?
Well, some of those new technologies that we're starting to see, because another trend that you talk about is geoengineering will persevere and create controversy. We're starting to see companies emerge to remove CO2 from the atmosphere, but we don't know if they're going to be successful or give us like a whole new world of global issues.
Yeah, the company. I know some people that work at carbon engineering in Squamish. And they extract carbon, CO2 from the atmosphere, and they turn it into clean burning fuel. It's amazing technology. It's not at scale. In fact, a lot of the people that are investing in them, or some of them anyway, are actually oil companies that are trying to do their carbon offsets.
Yeah.
I don't mind that so much, be part of that solution, right? But we're not going to be able to create it at scale, so we have to be careful of the narrative around that. There's a second part of the geoengineering, which is being able to cool down the planet by pushing aerosols into the atmosphere. Now,
imagine we're going to be living in a world where that's necessary.
Okay, it's interesting though. It's inspired by nature. 1991, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. It's top blue. Like there was basically a massive earthquake. It shifted the plates and it blew its top, and it put so much smoke and ash and whatever into the atmosphere that for a period of time it dropped the planet's temperature by 1 degree Fahrenheit.
Oh wow!
So it's interesting, but you can't do that. And this is why it's controversial.
Yeah.
Because you're taking things out and turning them into something else or putting something up there. Mother Nature is fickle and very sensitive, right? We can't just, a butterfly flaps its wings in Asia and causes a tornado in Kansas, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's an ethical dilemma that comes along with, and I guess a scientific one as well. The last trend that we talked about looking at in 2020, business revelations and revolutions. Will an old and failed aspiration return new and improved?
Businesses have kind of been hierarchical. They've worked in ways, and my boss, I want to be a director and a VP, I want to be the CEO and blah, blah, blah. And this hierarchy is sort of failing a lot of companies these days. In my article, I give an example about Kyocera in Japan, and since the mid-1950s, they've had a new way of working called amoeba management, where they create amoebas of teams that have got their own independent profit and loss accounts, and whilst there's oversight from the company as a whole, they can innovate. And if they don't innovate and they fail, the amoeba dies, and those people go into other amoebas, and they continually innovate. And Kyocera has been hugely profitable year by year since the mid-1950s, even through really tough times in Japan's history, right? And Mr. Inamori, the ex-CEO now, is sort of a Buddhist-level monk, the way that he looks at the world, and the whole approach is about wisdom and love and empowerment and working together for society's benefit. I love it. I've been talking about it for years. I just think that there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to start to really sort of wake up and realize that they can be better in the world.
Yeah, well, we'll see if that's in fact going to happen in 2020. Check out NikolasBadminton.com, futurist researcher, keynote speaker, Nikolas Badminton. I'll tell you, 2019 highlight for me is when we met and you became a regular on the show. I really appreciate it, man. I love talking to you.
I love coming here, and wait until 2020 when gloves are off.
Yeah, all right. 2020 it is. We'll talk again, Nick. Thanks,
Cheers.
man.
Cheers, Jeff.
There's Nikolas Badminton.